I love roll and write games. Roll and write games are some of my favorite games. And if you're not sure what that term means, you're probably not alone. The term hasn't been around really forever in gaming, and even in gaming, it can sound confusing. And maybe you're just coming to this channel because you're trying to figure out what a roll and write game is. Whatever you're thinking, we're going to start with kind of a history of roll and write games because they've been around for a while, but not everybody knows what they are. And we're going to talk about what a good roll and write game is, and maybe what a roll and write game without any rolling is, and maybe even a game without any writing is, and maybe a game without any writing or rolling that might still be a roll and write game. I don't know. We'll see. But this is a video about roll and writes and their history, and then we're going to talk about some good ones, or at least what makes the basics of a good roll and write game, and then we'll end up with some roll and writes that I like that maybe you'll like to check out too. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep making videos like this one. The year is 1956, and Edwin S. Lowe has trademarked Yahtzee. That's Yahtzee with the Z-E-E here, not the Yahtzee like in Scandinavia with the Z-Y, or Generalis, or Niffle, or Bunko, or the innumerable other dice games that are very similar to Yahtzee, like the Yacht game. Well, Edwin S. Lowe has bought the game from a Canadian family that played it on their yacht, and he is able to popularize this game so that by the time he sells it to Milton Bradley, he has sold 40 million copies, and then by the time we get to 2022 today, the game is selling about 50 million copies a year according to Hasbro, which bought Milton Bradley later on. So we have a game that starts off not very popular at all. In fact, what Edwin did to popularize it was he sent it out to people who would teach the game and have some fun in their homes and invite people over and show them the game and use that word of mouth advertising. And that's how the popularity of the game grew, at least according to Edwin. But also, more importantly for our purposes here, thinking about roll and writes, the game has this score pad where you're going to get 3 chances to then write a number down here relevant to what you've rolled with the 5 dice. And when you roll that and write it down, you'll have the same number of turns for everybody, 13 rounds that happen, and you roll it, and you can reuse your score pad. Everybody is using their random dice to make some fixed chances that are written down. The popularization of this is what's important for us as we think about the history of roll and writes. Even though there are a number of other games that do the same thing, this really brought the viability of this type of thing into popular culture. Fast forward almost 20 years, we're in the early 70s, and Sid Sackson is creating great games. In fact, some of those games still are wonderful classics like Can't Stop. But before we get to Can't Stop, we get this wonderful little gem. The Great Races was a predecessor to Can't Stop Express, and although Can't Stop Express fixed some things and was a pretty cool game, this one was neat in that it really showed what Push Your Luck could do with pencil and paper type games. Now this is important too because pencil and paper games have existed, but part of the difference in roll and writes is that pencil and paper isn't the only thing that makes a roll and write. And in fact, like I said in the beginning of the video, you might not even need pencil and paper to do a roll and write. It's the fact that you're doing something simultaneously with others as they do something, and you create something so that you can see that laid out in front of you. That's a little bit different than some of the other pencil and paper games, which might be about hidden movement or about storytelling or about making a shared world. This is simultaneous action in which we are getting to create something on our own. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Can't Stop Express, but I will mention that it was a very solid addition to these types of games. It still sells. It's a wonderful game. As you can see here, the copy I'm showing is by Eagle Gryphon Games, but Can't Stop Express, wonderful little game where you're pushing your luck. I love Can't Stop games. I love Push Your Luck. I think it's a lot of fun. But this is in 1989, so we still have to go a bit farther before we start to get to the games that feel like modern roll and write games, but the name doesn't even exist yet either. Continuing our journey through the history of roll and write games, we come to two important games in 2007. The first one is Würfelbingo and The Settlers of Catan, Das Würfelspiel. Both of these games are important in the sense that they're published by major publishers, Schmidt and Cosmos in Germany. And as you may or may not know, Germany is a leader in board games. So with this comes a normalization of what will become a standard for roll and write games: a small box, a pad of paper, and some dice. The games aren't groundbreaking in any other sense, but they are important for normalizing the format. It's not long at all until we get to a part of the genre that I really enjoy called polyominoes. If you don't think you're familiar with polyominoes, you probably are. You've heard of Tetris, and polyominoes are just those shapes where things can turn and fit together, and within roll and writes we often have those show up and are used frequently to fill up our pads of paper. The game Mosaics makes use of this with X's and O's and squares, and it's a nice start of the polyomino part of roll and writes, although it's not a necessary feature. This game is unique in how it brings together more complicated elements of board games like worker placement and things like that, Euro games really, into a roll and write game. Rather than just being a simple roll and write like some others are, this has more elements to it. And with that, we kind of end the early age of roll and writes. As we get to the second decade of the 2000s, we start to see more and more roll and writes, especially as we get into 2013 and 2014. One of the most important ones of those is Qwixx, not because it's a difficult game, it's a rather simple game, but the fact that you're doing something and then simultaneously someone else will get to do something at the same time while you make your selections with the dice is very influential. I've seen this game all over in malls, in toy stores, in card stores, and lots of different places, even places like Walmart and Target. This has a big box and a small box, and I've seen people take it camping. I've seen it in airports. I've seen this game all over. It's a very popular, simple game with that action selection. Qwixx is an important milestone in the roll and write development. We've talked a lot about roll and write games, but we haven't really talked about where the name even came from, although we've talked about rolling and we've talked about writing. Well, the roll and write name has been used in education for years. There's games where you can roll some dice and write some words down for kids, and that helps them with their reading and writing skills, especially at a young age. But that's not what we've been talking about in this video, if that's not been obvious. But we get to 2016, and Susan, or Suzanne, I'm not sure how you say her name because I've never actually heard it said out loud. I just have read it several times. But 2016, she and a friend are interacting and talking about games that they like to play that have these types of characteristics where you're rolling and writing or flipping in cards and writing and doing this sort of thing. And they come up with a name and share it publicly that then gets spread pretty virally in the community of board gamers because she happens to also have had experience working in the board game industry. But she shares it, and she shares the name Roll and Write, and it really catches on with several people from there from January 2016 until we get to here 2022, where there are literally hundreds and hundreds of roll and write games, and there's an entire blog that comes to be dedicated later on by a guy, I think in Spain, Juegos Roll and Write Games, and he has a history on there, and that's obviously been an influence on this video, but all as well as the many forums and other places dedicated to people who are lovers of roll and write. But what is a roll and write? We just talked about the name and what that means, but I still don't know if we know what a roll and write is. I guess what I would say a roll and write is at this point, and what I'm pretty good to say that I'm okay with, is that there is a randomizing element around a shared experience, and then there is something that you get to create in the final experience. That's why the experience of using a pencil or a dry erase marker or something like that is so fun, is that you get to create something each time that you play the game. And I think those three elements are what really bring it together, and that's why it doesn't really matter if it's dice or cards. as we play the game. If you were to guess that these games had anything in common, you might not if you didn't know anything about roll and writes. But given what we've just said about a randomizing element and a shared experience and creating that final thing, you might finally think that these are roll and writes, even though there's no pencil in this one at all. There are scissors, hence the name Clip Cut Parks. This one, you flip cards and it has a bunch of different maps and it has colored pencil, so yes, you're writing, but you can also say you're drawing. And this one, you're doing a bunch of kind of like crokinole or kind of dexterity type things where you're flicking around little discs on a board. These don't seem to share anything in common, but they all have that common idea of roll and write, and I think they all fit in the family. It's a weird family, but it's a family I love. I'm going to share two of my favorite games in this family before I share my final point. Imagine a game where you are telling a story about what happens on the moon, and this story is told over 8 different parts of the story, and the story is like one of those choose your own adventure things. Well, that's this. Welcome to the Moon. This game is that type of thing, but it's a roll and write too. But well, really it's a flip and write because it has cards instead of dice, and there's the rolling, and it's got random stuff and stuff changes, and then you have this story is the experience that you've told once you finish all of it. Or you could choose just to play one part of this if you just like something that gives you lots of different things in one box. This is a roll and write that just makes me happy to play. I love this game. Or what if you want to talk about ancient history? Then you have this game, Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian's Wall is a worker placement game where you're taking lots of actions to decide how you're going to build your wall or build out your town, or take care of those nasty things that you haven't taken care of yet that you need to take care of in town by bribing people. That's what Hadrian's Wall is. It's a wonderful game that plays like it's a much heavier board game, and you're going to have a calm time sitting around with other people, placing your workers and figuring out what's going on there. And you might even learn a little bit of history. Another roll and write where you're not actually even doing, well, you're doing some writing, but you're not rolling any dice, and you're placing workers down. It's fantastic. I love this game too. Okay. So what if you're not doing any rolling or writing or flipping, but is it still a roll and write? And maybe that's what this whole video has been building to. Maybe I'm just trying to justify how much I like this new game. I don't know, but I think it feels like a roll and write, even though there's no rolling or writing, and I'm kind of confused by that, and I wanted to share my confusion with you. Here it is, the Guild of Merchant Explorers. This game is so confusing in that it feels like a roll and write. You have maps, and you're making something, and you have randomization, and you have shared selection at the same time. So you have the shared experience, you have the random element, and you have a map that you create at the same time. Like I could pick one part of this that is from one of my other roll and writes from my collection somewhere, and it's in this game, and it feels like it. I don't know if this is like a Platonic type of question where we're looking for the essence of the thing and we can't quite find the thing, and then we find the thing that breaks all the things. Maybe that's this game. I like this, and I feel like it fits in the family even if somebody else doesn't. So I'm going to call this a roll and write, even though nobody else says it is, and even though that's a confusing term for this game, because there's no rolling, there's no writing. It's still like it because it feels like it belongs in the family. Thanks for coming with me on this wonderful adventure of games I love that I happen to call roll and writes, that even really isn't a category on Board Game Geek, but we like to talk about them anyways. I think that they're one of these games for somebody out there everywhere. I like them so much. They're a lot of fun. This is really a love letter to roll and writes and the games that feel like them. But thank you for watching. Thanks for checking this out. I want to know what your favorite roll and write is, what you think I'm going to miss, because I didn't even in 10 minutes cover everything that's in roll and writes. Tell me about it. Let me know what you enjoy. Do you love a nice simplicity and calmness that comes in a roll and write, or do you want a little bit more Euro in your roll and write, or do you just want a little bit more randomness that gives you a really wild feeling in the game? Whatever it is, tell me what you like and enjoy and what I left out. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you later. Happy gaming.